Signs of the Southland. Gentlemen, a very busy rivalry weekend and Thanksgiving weekend in the city of Atlanta. And first, we're going to start with a bit of trivia about what comes next after this weekend for the college football season.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple question, Jeds. Do you know, this is on brand since Georgia Tech is going bowling for the first time in quite some time, do you know the first postseason football game that Georgia Tech ever played?
First postseason football game Georgia Tech ever played.
Mhm.
It wouldn't happen to be the 1927
Seven.
Rose Bowl, would it?
It wouldn't happen to be that, but it would happen to be the New Year's Day at 1929, after the 1928 season Rose Bowl, in which Roy Regals ran very far the wrong way and set Tech up for their second national championship. So all that to say, obviously, it was very hard to get a Rose Bowl win in there if you were an ACC, SEC, Big Eight, Southwest Conference type team for a very long time. There is one piece of significance, though. There are widely considered four top tier bowls: the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. And OnePointSafety.com, great little site talking about some college football history, interest pieces, stuff. They've defined winning the four of those as the college football Grand Slam. Do you know the 8 other teams besides Georgia Tech who has won at least one of all 4 of those bowls?
We've won one of all 4 of those bowls? Oh, wow.
Georgia Tech has wins in the Orange, Sugar, Cotton, and Rose, as well as 8 other teams. Bama is one of them. They've actually done that 4 total times. So they have the most Grand Slams, as you will.
They're the Novak Djokovic of college football?
Yes. So Alabama and Georgia Tech, those are 2 of the 9.
Did Georgia get it when they won that Rose Bowl against Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay.
But Georgia got it for the second time when they did that, because they had actually won.
Oh, they had one.
1943 Rose Bowl after their first national championship winning.
Okay.
Michigan?
Nope. There are only 2 Big Ten teams on this list. Michigan is not one of them.
Ohio State.
Yeah. They had to be one. Scotty?
No, he only said 2 Big Ten teams.
Who was the other one?
There's only one that you've said.
Oh.
So
yeah, we got another one still in it. Penn State.
Yep. They are helped out because they were an independent for a very long time. So
yes.
Kind of come and go with some of these other bowls, i.e. the Cotton or the Orange.
Stanford's never played in a Sugar Bowl, to my knowledge. So
there's a lot of options here.
USC?
Yeah, I was thinking of them.
Not USC. The other. Let me see how I can describe this while still making this interesting.
Texas.
That's one of them.
Okay, so we're down to just 3.
3 more. You're gonna smack yourselves on the heads when you find out what these 3 are, because
Florida State.
Nope. Different ACC team.
Oh,
Clemson.
Miami?
Not Clem. Jack, what'd you say?
Miami. Dang,
you got it.
There's one.
There's 2 left.
2 ACC teams?
No, 2 total teams left.
Total.
It's very difficult to define the conferences of both of these teams given their current situations and or historical situations.
Not Utah.
Which means that both of them are discontinued?
No. One you might call ACC adjacent.
Oh, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. And the other one is in an interesting conference pickle, at least through, I guess, July 1st.
Oklahoma.
Boom. That's all 9. And
We did good.
Do you know what makes Georgia Tech unique among those 9? They haven't won it the most. That would be Alabama with 4 Grand Slams. But they do have another particular distinction worth noting.
We have one each, or have we won multiple Orange Bowls?
We've got our first Orange Bowl win came in 1940, but you're right. It does have something to do with being early, perhaps.
Oh, the earliest
First
one
team to
finish.
complete it.
Oh,
Georgia Tech is the first to have won
they should
all of
put
the
that in
major
the
bowls.
stadium. That's a good one.
And they did that while still members of the SEC. They went to the Rose Bowl after the 28 season. They went to the Orange Bowl after the 39 season, the Sugar Bowl after the 43 season, and the Cotton Bowl after the 1954 season. Of course, other Sugar Bowls and Rose Bowl and Orange Bowls sprinkled in there, but those were the first to win it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Grant, for setting the stage for the postseason. Now that Georgia Tech's football season, its regular season, is now officially complete with an 8-point loss to the team out east. Jack, please give me a scene setter for this one.
We came in bowl eligible, so in some ways, I think in a lot of ways, the season was already a rousing success compared to where we were projected to be, and where we came from even at the beginning of the season with losses that were very much not good, some wins that were very good, some would say extremely fortunate as well. But I think the goal going into the game against Georgia was to not embarrass ourselves, not get absolutely waxed. Only one team had been within one score of Georgia all season, and that was Auburn, who also similar to us had some terrible games and some weird good games against good teams. And I feel like that's what happened. We did not embarrass ourselves. We played as complete of a game as we have all season. There was 50 plus thousand people in the stadium. Granted, a lot of Georgia people, as we would have expected. But like even during the day on campus, it was lively. It was rowdy. People were having a good time. And overall, in terms of the experience of playing Old Fashioned Hate, this was easily my favorite of all the ones that I have been to since I became a Yellow Jacket in 2017.
I can't say it's my favorite because I did get spoiled my freshman year, but certainly of the ones on campus, I think tailgate scene was really lively. I think there's pretty good energy in general. I know that this is not something that our fans probably want to hear, but I found basically everyone I interacted with from both sides very cordial, which I think is kind of a nice change from how I've kind of, been presented. That it's a little bit tougher when you go to Athens, right? You're kind of out of your depth, and it's a little bit like, oh, strange. But in terms of home crowds, it's good to see the stadium full. I think there's a lot of good energy. We can talk the football as well, but I think all in all, I expected to be a little bit more, I guess, upset if we lost, and I'm kind of just like at peace. But part of that's also me trying to have a more healthy relationship with sports. So go figure.
So 31-23 final result. Mr. Purdy, how did they get there?
We started with a lead in this game. It's very similar to the Clemson game. We got an early first quarter turnover, turned that into a touchdown in plus territory. So we were up early. Georgia was able to battle back. They got their what happened there? Hold on. Let me pull up my actual proper notes here. That would make a lot of sense. We were up 7-0 early in the first quarter, and then Georgia came right back, tied it at 7 each. And then on the next drives, this is near the end of the first quarter, we got down to 3rd and 3 within the 10-yard line, did not convert that 3rd and 3, and took a chip shot field goal that made it 10-7, which in hindsight, while it doesn't get us all the way to a win, it at least has you thinking about maybe we go for it against Georgia when you got 4th and inches next to the goal line. So toss up there, but seems like Brent Key said after the game and during the game too, like that was the game plan. So I know some data stuff would say otherwise. Second quarter,
We'll get there.
Yeah, I know we'll get there. There's a whole page dedicated to it. Georgia got the lead in the second quarter. They were only up 21-13 at the end of the first half. Kendall Milton was exceptional. He had his career high rushing yards, which, knowing our rushing defense, I am not surprised in the slightest that he was able to accomplish that. Third quarter, we kept it tight. Georgia had the ball first, and we got them to 3 and out, which was incredible. And then Georgia went up, got to 24-13 on a field goal, and then we scored a touchdown. Or then they scored a late touchdown in that quarter to go 31-13. Fourth quarter, we scored twice, a field goal and a touchdown, including a great interception by KJ Wallace in the end zone to prevent another Georgia score. So 31-23 loss. felt close the whole time, even when it was 31-13. Like it was 3 scores at that point, but it didn't feel like we were dead. We kept making good plays when we needed to. We won the turnover battle, which is exceptional to say against the number 1 team in the country, and was probably the only real path we had to winning this game, if we were to win the game at all. So,
I think like at the end of the day, there are really no moral victories, but I'm at least trying to feel peace with the things that were good, and to some points we kind of discussed before getting on air, I guess a little bit is, you can sell momentum, you can sell progress. I think, to be candid, that seems to be what a lot of the higher Brent Key, and not supporters, that's the wrong way to put it, but the folks who were,
opponents
kind of lining up with that were saying like, hey, look, like Brent Key showed some sort of progress related to this whole Athens situation. Again, moral victories, but
it's relevant to know.
Maybe it's something that you can sell to recruits or to people who are interested.
It's relevant because this was part of Brent's pitch in his opening press conference, was we're going to work 365 days a year to beat our in-state rival. Like, that was a very specific item in his to-do list when he became the head coach. Yes,
but he didn't defeat him. So
they didn't win, and the press conference, everyone in that press conference was unified in their message of we didn't do enough, we didn't execute well enough. Brent was asked the question about, like, when you look back on the season, are you satisfied with the progress? All he said was yes. He wasn't going to elaborate on that, which he shouldn't probably right now. They got another game to look forward to. I kind of liked how Kirby called our offense basically a triple option at the post game presser, because we were kind of running a shotgun version of that, and Haynes King had 2 rushing touchdowns. They were very versatile in terms of how versatile our run game looked. This was of the best games we had all year by far. Dante looked good. Jamal Haynes had good runs. Haynes King had great runs. And it didn't really ever get stale. There's a couple drives where it got a little too predictable. I think we had one where we ran Dante 3 times in a row, and they totally knew it was coming each time. But beyond that, like, we looked very good against what's surely going to be one of the playoff teams and possibly the 3-time national champion, or 3rd consecutive national champion. So, hopefully that part doesn't happen. And Eric Singleton came back. He was making catches after the drops he had last week. They worked overtime this past week to just get him back into his groove, which clearly showed, because he made some he made his 2 best catches, sadly, were out of bounds. But if either of those catches were in bounds, those are game-changing catches, because one of those is in the end zone at the end of the second half, or at the end of the first half, and then one was an illegal touching that he had. So, like, in terms of all the pieces offensively, the pieces were working. Defensively, all the same issues were still there. They ran the ball all over us. They could throw on us. They did not start Brock Bowers, who seemed to be a healthy scratch. And that very well could have been a very, very big reason why the game was this close, because that man is unguardable, and we definitely do not have the guys to guard Brock Bowers the slightest. But yeah, I think I'm with those. It just, in sheer terms of what we've seen this year, coming from that Bowling Green game, coming from that Louisville game, and now that we're playing this kind of football in November, going to a bowl game, has me extremely hopeful that there is something real was actually done this year that can move us forward into the future. Haynes King said after the press conference, he loves the people here. He loves what they're doing. And he says the product in the field shows the progress that they made internally that we can't see in practice and stuff like that. So I will say I am very satisfied. I don't like it that we lost, but I am satisfied.
It's a different look from last year, when a certain head coach said, if you can't see progress, you're not looking for it. I think you can
really
see...
only last year? Jeez.
I think it was last year.
It's like a million years ago.
It was recent. But my point is that I don't think it's difficult to see the progress that's been made from year to year. And I think that's, even if they were inconsistent, I think they were inconsistent in fixable ways, like not systemic action.
And they made those rebounds throughout the season. I mean, the Bowling Green lost, they made the change at defensive coordinator. They saw what needed to get fixed it as well as they could, with given the parameters at the time. different game plans for different weeks. I figured out the running game was way more productive than Haynes King throwing. Minimized his interceptions down the stretch, which was a problem at the front half. So yeah, like that was, I think that's a big note of change year over year, is actually making the mistakes go away more frequently than not.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I think part of it is just acknowledging that there are problems, right? And
Yeah,
being
yeah,
able to assess your situation, assess and look at this game tape. It's being able and open to recognize those mistakes and take action to remediate them. And obviously, this is a work in progress. It's a 6-win team right now. It's could be a 7-win team by the time it's all said and done in December. But I think we were very frank last week when we talked about next season. We talked about what an over under wins total could be. And I mean, we underestimated, right? We said 4.5 is where we'd set the line, and we might go for 5. I think it was 4.5.
We were somewhere in that 4 to 5 range, yeah, with Kiefer.
Yeah, but we said we'd go under 6 at whatever it was. My memory is bad,
yeah,
but we said we'd go under 6 at the very least. So it's just all, you have to keep it all in perspective too.
I don't necessarily. It's like, oh, I definitely understand. Obviously, things
it's
bounce and break
yeah.
different ways. But as I've kind of like sat with that take, that was something that kind of bugged me. I'm like, you don't really want to predict regression or, or just not the same level that you see this year. But it's going to be tough. It truly is. But at the same time, this team, it wasn't always, 2 steps forward, 2 more steps forward. It was a lot of two forward, 1 back, 1 sideways type season. And I think you would have sat us down, and I've recycled this line so many times this year. I said it after we were 3-3. I'll say it now after we're 6-6. If you would have sat us down 3 months ago and said, hey, at the end of the year, you're going to be 6-6, and you'll have been respectable for the most part in both the Clemson and the game against the boys from Athens, get 2 almost 3 ranked wins, I think all of us would have been like, bet. And I think us, weaseling it, like, obviously, I think it hurts more to lose close, and it probably does, because it feels like it's within.
Right, you're at least
you're
feeling the possibility in game. Like I couldn't really ever bring myself to resign to the fact that we might not win the game. Like as soon as we came back on the 80-yard drive in the fourth quarter to at least make it an 8-point game, it's like, shoot, that's a stop at a touchdown, and we have scored under much tighter circumstances to win a football game. So it was granted, it was Georgia. They were running all over the place, so I wasn't terribly confident in that at the time, but it was like, well, shoot, they at least gave himself a chance, which is way better than we have done in the past.
I think that's a good time to start talking about how those chances are built, especially when it comes to some of the decisions on the margins. I put together all of the 4th downs that I could track from game on paper on our shot sheet here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the ones that
before you go into the 4th downs, I do want to point out that we experienced a lot of 4th downs because, and kind of astonishing, it was only a 1-score game in hindsight. Tech was very ineffective on 3rd down throughout last night's game.
Yeah, 2 of 11.
2 for 11?
Yeah.
Like the reason that we have so many data points here is because we had to get to that point so many times, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the game on paper box score right now, and I'm seeing on late downs, Tech success rate was 36%. And on passing downs, they were 20%. Basically 2 similarly sliced stats right around 3rd downs. Fairly small sample size on both of those, but still a pretty significant dip in form compared to what their normal success rate was of 52% for the game. On money down, they couldn't make their money, to borrow a phrase from a now former head coach. But to go into some of these notable decisions, and just to give you an idea of how optimal 4th down decision making is calculated, there's a model that we use that is based on time left in the game, distance to the 1st down marker, distance from goal, available timeouts, score difference, and then spread. The Vegas spread is used as a proxy variable in the model for team strength. In these decisions, we didn't actually have spread data for this game from ESPN due to some data provider issues, but I used 2.5, which is the average home field advantage in a given college football game. And I actually flipped that to the opponent just because, I know which team here is stronger than the other. So,
well, if you look at the actual spread, it was like 20 some points. So
it was 24 and a half. And those large spreads, especially with these kinds of models, they just sort of, when the talent difference is that big, they just sort of say, nothing you do will matter, eat at Arby's. And I don't feel like that's fair. So I at least tried to give the team strength here a fighting chance. So first decision is that 4th and 1 at the 8-yard line. The model says go, that Tech should have gone for it in that situation. The game was tied. Tech actually kicked a field goal. Another situation later on in the game, 4th and 10 at the plus 28. Tech was down 4. The bot said go. Actual result, Tech kicked another field goal. I think this one is a little bit more defensible, given that it's 10 yards instead of 1, and you're at the 28. A couple other these I have a couple comments on. I think it's unfortunate that Aiden Burn missed a field goal from, I believe that's 49 at the end of the half. The historic rates say that college kickers have about a 50% chance to make that kick. So it's really a coin flip. So the last one that I actually want to talk about very quickly is the PAT decision on that final drive. Instead of going for 2, down 9. We don't actually have stats for this one. There's no 2-point model for college as there is for the NFL. And I wish I actually ran it for the NFL so I could have this result in front of me. But I personally would have gone for 2 there just to make it a 7-point game instead of an 8-point game. The logic there is you always go for 2 early. You go for 2 as early as often as possible so you have more information later on in the game. You know what score you need to get to win the game. And if you get it, great. If you don't, you've added information to your data set. You know how to operate in that situation later on.
But in that case, if you're down 9 and you go for 2 and miss it, you're still down 2 scores, and that's where you lose me.
Yeah, no, I mean, that one is that one is more of a vibes-based pick. I know we're in the data section, but that's a vibes-based pick of, you're playing the number 1 team in the country. You know that you want to win the game. You need to be aggressive when you're the team that's trailing and wanting to win the game. I think we saw that with the onside kick decision that came up right after. Obviously, you have to kick an onside there in order to try to get the ball back very quickly. But I think generally what you want to do is put yourself, when you're making decisions like this, you want to put yourself in the best possible position to win the game in regulation. It's always about winning the game in regulation. It's not about going to overtime. Overtime is a 50-50 win probability. Winning the game in regulation means greater than 50% win probability at the end of the game, right? So that's how these decisions are assessed. I will add, there are a couple caveats with these models. These models always assess 4th down decisions versus average defenses, like historically average defenses. They are not based on the model or on the defense that you are currently facing. So naturally, there's some room for nuance between what the computer says that we've described, and what the coach actually chooses, because one of them is sitting in the actual context of the situation and one of them is not. I think given that context, most of these decisions are justifiable. You can defend almost all of them other than, I think, the 4th and 1 at the beginning of the game, and possibly I'll maybe throw a 50-50 defensibility score on the PAT at the end of the game. But all of the other ones are relatively defensible. That being said, again, you are playing within a score or maybe within 2 scores for most of the game versus the number 1 team in the country in a game that was decided by 8 points. If you say the 4th and 1 at the 8 is 4 points left on the board, and then your missed field goal, which I guess, again, give and take, because the 50% shot is 3, you've left 7 points on the table out of an 8 that you needed to tie. It's a rough way to go. Like, it's very frustrating. I think we said it before. It's like, it's frustrating. It's more frustrating because they played it close.
Yeah.
And I think taking a look at these numbers, I think even 4 more points in any of these late game situations makes them sweat a lot more in how they handled the later stages of the game, instead of being, we're just going to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. We're not going to take any risks. If you get it within 4, if you get it within a score, maybe they play a little bit more open. Maybe they play a little bit more risky. They play without themselves or outside of themselves. They don't try to kill clock, and they don't try to game manage. On top of all that, too, and Jake, you said this earlier too, the spread was 24.5. I don't have the exact implied win probability of that spread in front of me, but I am fairly sure it's above 90%, even for an away team. And that means effectively Tech was supposed to roll over and die in this game. The fact that they didn't is great. Don't get me wrong. But that, to me, that means when you have the opportunity to put away a drive or extend a drive or what have you, you have to take it. You have to go for the throat against a defense that you know is feisty like this. And that, as a stats person, to see the score line being 8 points, and then see some of these chances not taken, given that spread context, that just differential in team strength, is frustrating. And I think that's why, for me, it's just hard for me to sometimes see this as progress or take a lot of joy in saying, hey,
I mean, the fact we're even at these decisions is progress. Like, this wasn't a reality we got to have last year really at all, and in some cases earlier this season in games that if we played Ole Miss right now, take the Ole Miss team we played, that version of them then, and put them in now. That game is not over. Second half, like that rollover defense we had at the end of that game, that probably doesn't happen. It's not a terribly better defense, but at least effort wise, we were way, way better in that case. I think I agree with you for the most part on the fact that we should have gone for it in that first one, because you can't waste punches when you're going to have so few high quality chances to knock them out.
And I mean, that's the only way that you win a game like this, right?
Yeah.
Like, the game plan, you have 2 options in a game like this. Either intentionally turn it into a track meet, or make it as difficult as possible for them to move the ball and have opportunities to move the ball.
Yeah. And the track meet was probably our best case scenario, but then just Georgia's defense just is good enough that we did really well against them considering everyone else they played, but still, like, that's a really hard bet to get.
Yeah. And I mean, like, 1, like you said, the track meet is difficult just because of the defense you're playing. And 2, is like more possible, but you have to be intentional about the way that you call this game and extend your drives. And that's the reason why this is frustrating to me. And it's very difficult for me to take a lot of joy out of a losing result because of that delta, right? That it was so close, and these are punches that you pulled in some of these scenarios that maybe you shouldn't have. And you should have just said, we're supposed to lose anyway. Why not take this opportunity? 4th and 10 from the 23. Hey, let's put together our best play. Let's try to go over the top, and let's take some chances to win this game, because this is the only way that this is going to happen.
Yeah, I'll verbalize at least what I said in the Slack when we had that when we kicked that 7-7 was I get the idea of if you can get a guaranteed lead, you get a guaranteed lead. And Agent Burr is a surefire way to get a guaranteed lead versus your offense. Granted, I know it's inches. At least I understand that rationale that you could be leading, and Georgia did turn the ball over. And I think they had a fumble too that they recovered in the game. Like, both teams had fumbles that they recovered on their own. So the wiggle room was more than we probably expected at this point in hindsight. Also, I want to note defensively, Kyle Eford, 8 tackles, led Tech. Georgia had 2 guys that had 8 tackles, but he was the man last night. Like, Kyle Eford has a shot to be special for us if he sticks around. The Field goal, that field goal that we missed, that was a hard field goal. That was long. Aiden hasn't really had to do many from that distance this year, so I'm glad we at least put him in that position at the same time.
I mean, he almost hit it too, right? Like,
Yeah,
again, it's a 50-50 shot. And if he makes it, you feel a lot better at the end of this day, only losing by 5. And you like, it shifts the psychology of your opponent by changing what the difference is in the score and how they game plan for that second half.
yeah. Like we haven't had many chances to like have this kind of like Brett, still a first time head coach. He hasn't had this situation where he is the key decision maker in this too. So who knows if we get to this situation again in the bowl game, maybe even what are they going to do there? Bowl games, you got nothing to lose at that point. So you may as well go for in the bowl game. Which, in hindsight, also this game you could treat it that way too, because either you win and you make a bowl game, or you lose and you make a bowl game. And at best, if you win, you've toppled college football for at least a week. And if you lose, status quo doesn't change. So there wasn't much to lose there in that context. And I don't know if I don't think they're thinking about it in that context when you're on the sideline with 40 seconds to make a decision, or really like 20. So I get how that it's easier for us to say all this.
To Brett's credit, I think even the ones that he kind of made decisions that I wouldn't have made on some of these, they're defensible, and he made some decisions that I probably wouldn't have made, like 4th and 1 at his own 34, going for it down 4.
Yeah.
I probably would have. I mean, I would have thought about going for it, but I think I probably would have ended up punting. And that's a situation where you've won on the margins.
Also,
right?
also remember in the third quarter, we went for it on 4th and 7, and for a moment had a defensive pass interference call that they turned back because the ball was deflected at the line of scrimmage, which I know Jake's about to go off on a mile-long rant about that rule. But like
I've been looking for an opportunity to break back in here, and this is again the problem with us being good is y'all have opinions again. So thank you, but also your boy has some thoughts on a variety of things, but I'll keep it to the fact of the matter. One, forgot that you could review pass interference penalties. 2, forgot that when the ball. Akshay, why'd you go? No. Did they not
review pass I'm amazed that you can review pass interference penalties. That was an NFL rule for like a week.
You could review it. You can deny a pass interference penalty with review if it's clear it was tipped at the line, and
which it was, which is still a silly rule because like you're still interfering. I don't know if every hold, every pass interference, everything other than like the really obvious stuff like a face mask or a horse collar kind of deal was called, then no one would play a down of football, and we would just be doing yellow laundry up and down the field all game. But at the same time, it is frustrating that games turn on stuff like that. And I think for the reasons that we've kind of spelled out throughout this, what is inevitably going to be a very long podcast episode. So you're welcome, but also I'm sorry. Obviously there's so many different things that go into a game, right? Critical interception in end zone, very important. Forcing fumbles on opening plays, very important, but also getting things called and how that all shakes out is important as well. But, and then again, you have at the same time, icing the kicker to end a half, that kind of worked out well, puts them in a different spot, playing ahead 8 late rather than, 5. And I think a more comfortable margin. Anyways, kind of a random collection of thoughts, but
yeah. Can you tell me?
It's one of those things where it feels like it was more important than it was in the grand scheme, I think is the point I want to go.
Can you tell me what you were feeling when you saw we were going for it on 4th and 7? Collective, like, oh no, or a like, oh hell yeah, we're going for this.
I mean, we had to.
True. Yeah.
Like, at least to me and where I was standing, it just seemed like, yep, that's business. Got to keep playing. And I think, again, with us being kind of ineffective on 3rd down, it was something that, if anything, and this is a point we've litigated a lot so far, is Key and his staff has shown they're going to be aggressive. They may not always agree with specific models on how to be aggressive, but this is a time where it was like, hey, if you're punting on that, you're kind of surrendering. And yes, it did eventually get turned over anyways, blah, 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 changes the game, et cetera, et cetera. But all that to say, I think it's pretty characteristic from what we've seen the staff do this year. And heck, you only get the ball so many times. Why give it to the other team one play more than when you have to? That's kind of the attitude I take with it, especially again, the point on the spread being huge. You're supposed to, not win. Well, you're not going to win if you get rid of the ball. So might as well, take one more shot.
I think that is basically all we have to say about this game before we start talking in circles. A couple of other notes coming out of this. Tech finishes the regular season in 4th in the ACC. They led the conference in rushing yards per game at 197.1. They are technically Coastal Division champs, even though the Coastal Division no longer exists in a just world. This would mean that they're playing in Charlotte this weekend.
We're coming for you, Florida State.
Alas, this is a very, very stupid world of conference realignment and single table ACC. A couple of other final stats. Aiden Burr, now 12th nationally in kicking. Do you remember exactly what the kicking stat is?
It was
Zach, is that just XPs?
Yeah, I think it's just accuracy, like kicking percentage. So it was like 87 to 90 or somewhere in there, percent kicking. So
let's talk bowl projections really quickly now that the regular season is over. The ACC at last count had 12 bowl eligible teams out of a possible 14 plus Notre Dame. ESPN has Tech going to either the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte versus Kentucky or the Pinstripe Bowl in New York City versus Rutgers. The final bowl decisions here will be out after the conference championship games next weekend. Gentlemen, I think we kind of went over our preferred picks here last week, but how do you think after another game, to ruminate on this, how do you think this is going to work out, Mr. Grant?
See, this is something where I've tried to be agnostic because of my irrational dislike for one Mayo-based bowl based in Charlotte, simply because of silly internet nonsense the last time around. In terms of how it shakes out, I think having been out of the game for as long as we have and having there not be a clear pecking order anymore, I think it's kind of as difficult as ever to prognosticate. I will say Mayo, Pinstripe, I've seen out there. I've seen Gasparilla in a context too. I think whatever it is, to be honest, I hope it's not Charlotte. I think the boys have earned an interesting trip. It's been a long time coming. Maybe New York and Boston are a little bit chilly, but they're big cities. Opportunity to see some different stuff up there. And then you've got El Paso's kind of, I guess, chilly too. But if you go to Tampa, you might get some nice weather or something like that. So I kind of think about it in that sense, and maybe get an interesting matchup. Kentucky for the Mayo in terms of ESPN projections. I do think that would be interesting. Pinstripe playing Rutgers in basically a home game. Not sure I am as high on that, but also for Rutgers' sake, I think that if they played well enough to make a bowl, they kind of deserve to be somewhere that they can't just. As much as I love taking trains to places, if you just get on NJ Transit and then from there take the subway up to Yankee Stadium, that's much less exciting than getting on a plane and seeing somewhere a little bit different.
I think it's interesting that almost 7 years later, after the 2016 Gator Bowl, Tech could find itself in another bowl game versus Kentucky, having had 3 head coaches in that span, with Kentucky having the same one the entire time. It's fascinating.
That is funny. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I mean, my personal preference is the Mayo Bowl because I got family up there, and if it's supposed to be ACC versus SEC, and the other 6-6 team that is catching my eye in the SEC is Auburn. My dad went to Auburn. They have not played each other since I got to Tech, and it'd be really fun to play them in the Mayo Bowl and get to stay at family, see family up in Charlotte. So for Purdy reasons, that's my preference. Also, I mean, they could do the ultimate Duke Bowl, which is the Duke Blue Devils playing the James Madison Dukes in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. It's possible. It's possible. I know James Madison might have this loophole where they make a bowl because there aren't enough bowl eligible teams, and so they get to override the not necessarily a bowl ban, but the waiver thing that they had to go through. That's been a mess. So there's some really.
Can we talk about that waiver thing for a second? It's the dumbest thing that this team has won 11 games and probably should be in a line for like a New Year's Six or that
right.
Like
it's
right
it's
under
them or
that first
Tulane.
tier.
Yeah, them or Tulane. Yeah.
and they're completely not allowed because of dumb NCAA regulations. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
And the NCAA has had multiple chances to give them that waiver and has refused to multiple times. It is the most like college football insane thing ever that they are just not allowed to compete in a quality of bowl game that they deserve for the season that they've had.
Yeah, they have a fantastic fan base. They're very lively. They set a record crowd at College Game Day. When they came to Atlanta to play Georgia State, there were so many of them here. They're having James Madison be in your bowl is a great thing for your bowl game, and some bowl game is going to get lucky because the NCAA couldn't beat them enough.
Yeah, I still don't want to play him in that bowl game though.
Let's be clear.
I don't like our odds.
I want no part of an ACC Sun Belt game in which we have to face James Madison. However, James Madison deserves to go to a higher bowl than what they'll end up getting through this loophole.
Correct. Yes.
And it's their first time going to a bowl. I mean, I assume it's their first time going to a bowl game in the modern era, right? Post division split.
Yep.
It's not an experience that they get. So at the FCS level, so it'll be fun. It'll be fun for them. We'll be back to talk about both basketball teams and volleyball's tournament future right after this short break.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by section103.com, 20% off through November 27th. Otherwise, everything else remains pretty consistent from last week in terms of new items, baby and toddler stuff, as well as Felice Bobby Dog being back. But Gold Friday, 20% off everything through the 27th. Check it out, Section 103 on Twitter, section103.com as well.
Welcome back. Let's start with talking about women's basketball, which played 2 games in Cancun this past week and had the coaching staff appear as the practice squad for the duration of the week, which led to some very funny video from socials. Jack, talk to me about this first game versus Creighton.
Creighton, sadly a loss here, 57-46, after we had beat Rice from comeback fashion. Kara Dunn was back from her injury. She came off the bench. In this game and the game yesterday against New Mexico State, which is good to see. So we're back fully healthy after not being fully healthy for a few games. They only scored 2 buckets in the first quarter, but then rallied in the second, got hot. They're only down 3 at half. But Creighton shot 10 of 20 from 3 in the game, and that effectively was enough to do us in. They beat us 57-46, and when we only scored basically for 3 quarters, that makes it really hard to win a basketball game. So that's what lost.
Generally, scoring points is good.
Generally, having been to the Hawks game where they scored 152 points and lost, you'd think that'd be the case. But sports are amazing. And then the next day, as in it was Friday. Yeah, Friday. We won 66-55 against New Mexico State. That game had control of it, led pretty much the whole game. Toni Morgan had her first double-double of the season, which is good to see. Inez Noguero had a good 6-0 run in the second half that kind of made the lead gap a little bit good, much better. Aisha Arana hit her first 3. She's been trying to hit one so far, so it's good to see her finally land one and have our big center. Both her and Ari Termis will shoot from 3, so both of our big girls will do that, which is good to see. And then we had 4 jackets in double figures. So a much better team performance, I'd say. Good to have the immediate feedback from the Creighton game and channel that into a win. Kara Dunn did not start in that game either. We'll see if she makes the starting lineup over Rusne Agostinate. Rusne's been great, but it definitely is Kara Dunn's spot, and she provides a little bit more height and some better rebounding ability. So the team is very malleable right now in terms of what Nell Fortner needs them to do. If they need to go high offense, they can do that. If they need to go high defense, they can do that. If they want to go aim for 3-pointers, they can do that. They have more tools in the bag than they have in the past, especially last year, that can do multiple things, which I think is really good to see that they're much more dynamic. They have a good test this Wednesday against Florida, and then they play Nebraska, who are teams we will bring up in a different sport very soon.
One of the things that I talked about a lot before we went into this game was the level of competition at these preseason tournaments. Usually, what would you say the level of opponent of Creighton and or sorry, New Mexico State
Yeah,
were.
Creighton's generally been good. Like losing to like we should we have played better? Yeah, but give us 10 games against Creighton, would we lose 5 of those? I wouldn't be that. Yeah, we probably wouldn't be surprised in that
I
case.
was going to say they were a number 6 team in the tournament last year.
They were
They
good.
made it in. They made it to the Elite Eight before. I mean, summarily getting dispatched by South Carolina in 2022.
Yeah.
Don't really blame them too much there. But
Yeah.
a 6 seed in 2023. They're pretty quality team, I'd say.
Yeah. No, this team is still definitely, I would say, warming up. I think losing by if they played Creighton again at the end of the year, assuming they progress like they have been, I would expect that game to be closer. I also expect Creighton to be better. But yeah, I have no flashing red alert lights after these 2 games, to put it that way.
Gotcha. Cool. So next couple of games coming up, Florida on Wednesday. That is the 29th.
ACC SEC challenge.
Yes, the ACC SEC challenge. No, and that is a 5 p.m. tip. And then Saturday, December 2nd, they will be in Nebraska. That is a 3 p.m. tip in Lincoln. Let's talk about men's basketball very quickly because Cincinnati dispatched them very quickly. Jack, what you said about the Hawks game made me think, it's insane to give up, 40 points in a quarter and or score 40 points in a quarter and lose. It's even more insane to give up 40 points in a quarter and lose. What are we doing here? This early stage of the Daben Stoudemire era. I'm not trying to be particularly doomer, but I'm saying that this isn't looking particularly good, especially in the context of the end of the Josh Pastner era.
No, growing pains are massive right now, and they're more painful than they are growing. Jake, you've probably watched more basketball than me, at least in the guys' team so far. I think we have the same thought here. Just like it's very much a what the heck is going on here? Like this is not coming together that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there's growing pains, and then there's I think kind of what we're seeing here. It doesn't seem necessarily that it's growing pains, but it doesn't seem like Georgia Tech has been effective on offense, defense, or both in any total game so far. If that comes off,
it hasn't felt like
right.
They played a complete game at all.
And the defense definitely is bearing out what Coach Stoudemire has really said all along. I mean, this team's still going to have scoring droughts. I mean, they're I'm not going to say necessarily young, but certainly learning how to play together, I think is fair.
Yeah.
We were playing in Cincinnati's building. Cincinnati also pretty good team, but going on a 10-minute scoring spell, like that's not bueno. That's not bueno.
Both teams.
8 points at the half, first half, being down 8, whatever. That's basketball. But crazy town in the second half of the Cincinnati basketball game. Crazy town. You just can't do that and win basketball games. But again, we're 4, 3, 5, more than 3. What are we? 4 or 5 games into the Daben Stoudemire era? Like it's gonna happen. And I think the thing that we forget because Tech has been mired for so long is that even tournament caliber ACC and power teams, they lose weird games in a given year. Like not everyone, like if everyone was just gonna roll through their non-con, one, it's impossible because everyone, not everyone plays everyone, but people play each other, right? And 2 is because it kind of happens. And a head scratching loss to UMass Lowell up there with giant clunker against power team Cincinnati in their building. I think both of those are very on brand for the types of losses that Georgia Tech basketball, but also basketball teams in general, non-elite basketball team. This is not an elite basketball team. I don't think that's me shocking the world to say that about this or the women for that matter. Like, I mean, they were competitive with Creighton. Good. That's what you need to do. But anyways, it's not fully out of the realm of ordinary. My bigger concern is the fact that the second quarter had such a dry spell and such a relentless rain of offense from Cincinnati that just seemed like it could absolutely not be stopped. That's a little concerning. The overall result, that's just kind of what teams that are 100 to 200 in net do.
Right. Although Dodongo was back from injury in that game, so that was his 1st game back. We still do not have. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting names already. Lance Terry. Lance Terry, we're still missing to come back from injury. But beyond that, he's the last one left. Yeah, everyone played this game because it got so bad. Even Emmer Nichols played. Nathan George played. Carter Murphy played. Like, these guys were not seeing minutes in those first 3 games, but they sure as heck were against Cincinnati. So
It's just weird to see on a sheet 30-point loss to Cincinnati as a much more casual men's basketball fan. And again, I don't want to put the flag up for this is a crisis, but it's certainly not trending in the direction that I would have hoped.
No.
Is a fair way to put it.
We made 2 fewer free throws than we did field goals.
Oh my God.
It's not what you want.
I don't generally not recommended. I'm told that the best way to win basketball games is to score points.
Would recommend.
That's what analytics will tell you. Men's basketball's next games Tuesday, November 28th, 7 p.m. versus Mississippi State. That is part of the ACC SEC Challenge. And then Saturday, 2nd of December at 2:15 p.m. Eastern versus Duke. So packed slate this week to power high major opponents. And then also one of them is Duke. So busy. Gentlemen, last major segment of the night. Let's talk about the number 12 Georgia Tech women's volleyball program. They ended their season last week with a 3-1 loss to number 7 Louisville, which meant that the ACC championship was split between Pitt and FSU collected the conference's auto bid. The selection show for the NCAA tournament was on earlier while we were recording. Where are we at, Mr. Purdy?
We are not where we thought we would be, but we deserve probably at this point. We are effectively the 17th seed, which means we are the first team out from hosting. We are a 5 seed in the top left corner of the bracket, which is Nebraska's bracket, who has lost once, which was a 3-0 sweep against Wisconsin earlier this week. We are going to play Florida in their building on Thursday, who is the 4 seed. No, we're going to play in South Alabama. If we win that, we probably play Florida in their building.
I will say, Jack, I agree with all of that, especially the facts, because facts are facts. But the thing that I most want to add is one word, and it is that we are the 17 seed again.
That's true.
If you'll remember, is exactly the same thing that happened to Georgia Tech last year.
Yes.
Wound up with Tech going on the road, beating Wright State in the first round, and then losing to Marquette in their building in the second.
Yeah, that was sad. That was disappointing. This ideally also very similar reasons why I think we got to this point. Late season losses against Miami where we were not competitive enough. Miami was 6-0 in sets against us this year at home and on the road. Both of those not good. And I think I said this on the pod last week. I'll grant that the first match against Miami, we had just finished a skid of playing a bunch of 5-setters in a row, and I'm pretty sure they were just super, super gassed, and they were down Liv Bogridge, and it was just one of the lower points of the season for sure. That second one, though, no, not an excuse. They should have won that. They should have won that handedly, and they absolutely crapped the bed. So we're playing South Alabama, who we played earlier this year when we went down to Florida A&M for the FAMU Invitational. We swept them. They are 67th in Viper, which barely puts them in that end of the bubble range. They won the Sun Belt, so they at least were an auto bid. But they did take us in the third set to 25-23. So while we swept them, they did make life difficult for us at one point. We kind of killed them the first 2 sets, so we can kill them, and I think we should because we are back to full strength with Liv Mogridge back at this point. And she played well against Louisville, I'll note as well. Just one note about that Louisville game. Lost 3-1 this past Wednesday. We were certainly in it in all those sets, and we coughed up multiple set points in the second set. So that match was 3-1. It could have gone either way. It really could have. We were playing well enough to do that.
Feels like kind of distilled version of somewhere between the Pitt and UGA games based on, I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
the first two sets I was on a train, so I had to follow from Live Scores app. So I wasn't necessarily seeing every little detail that you pick up on the TV stream, but the get a set early, some team makes some sort of adjustments combined with cannot close a set out, which feels like for the most part has been better this year, but obviously no one's perfect at that.
Yeah, this was the first match where it truly felt like, oh crap, we're having a problem here. We had multiple set. We were up 24-20 in the second set and lost that set, which, if y'all remember, is what we did to Louisville in the first set when they came to our building. So that went both ways this year.
Dare I say it's probably, I mean, obviously seasons many things, but if Tech pulls that win out against Louisville, they're probably in the hosting position, and I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah. All right, I said that South Alabama won the Sun Belt. They actually didn't. They're an at-large, which, as we said, they were around the verge of that. They were 20-8 this year, so they were.
Wow.
They
were an at-large.
Yeah, I mean, they were a good bubble team. I mean, they're right there, so don't blame them for putting them in.
I did go back and check that, by the way. They lost in the semifinals, the first semifinal of the Sun Belt tournament. Coastal Carolina won that tournament.
Coastal won that. Okay, and there's some good Sun Belt teams in this tournament too. So they definitely had quality opponents this year. So that is not a nothing 20-8 that they have right there.
And I will say Sun Belt sneaky across, and we'll talk. I mean, they have 12 teams that made bowls this year in football, so obviously already there. Not so much men's women's basketball hype that I'm seeing, but this is going to be a pretty similar, I would say, story between not just volleyball, but keep an eye out for us to talk like this about them in baseball and softball season as well.
Yeah,
really, really quality league that they put together there. So it should be interesting. Weird that we're getting a rematch. I feel like we don't usually see first round rematches, but then again, it's also often a lot of times a oddball non-conference game between a low major and a high major in the first round.
We just happened to play that team this year. And they kept this squadron is very regional, like it's us playing South Alabama, and then it's Florida Gulf Coast playing Florida. So they kept it very localized for them.
And that's what they do try and do with regionals, whether it's baseball, softball, or the volleyball ones. And again, to draw on that metaphor, sense. Like when Tech hosted, it was us, the Citadel, South Carolina, and Western Kentucky. Like it's just kind of
it checks out to do that. I'll note in both matches we play against South Alabama this year, they will be neutral site games in the state of Florida.
One of them in Tallahassee and the other one in Gainesville. Getting the full, other than Miami, I guess you're getting the full.
They went to Tampa to start the year, and they've been to Miami. So
yeah, we will play.
Really, they just need Jacksonville and Orlando, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go to Jacksonville or Orlando? Like conceptually, do you ever really want to be in either of those places?
I mean, outside of Disney, no.
Jacksonville's a truly cursed place. Let's talk a little bit about these opponents. South Alabama, like you said, we played earlier this year. They were 20-8, 67th in Viper, 66th in the Evolve rankings, similar style of rankings. So like you said, right on that tournament bubble as an at-large. Tech, 22-6 on the year, 26th in the Viper, 20th in Evolve. Actually, I think 19th in Evolve. I have this mismarked. Let me correct that real quick. Florida Gulf Coast, 26-6, 77th in Viper, 88th in Evolve. They are the Atlantic Sun or ASUN tournament winner and gained their auto bid. Florida, 18-10, 21st in Viper, 20th in the Evolve rankings. Just a note there, because Tech is 19th and Florida is 20th in Evolve. They had a better receiving rating. Florida had a better receiving rating than Tech, but a worse on serve rating. So Tech was better when they had the ball on serve and worse when they were receiving the ball. That's how that kind of shakes out. A couple of other maybe reasons in addition to that Louisville loss, maybe deciding this hosting position.
Sure.
The SEC was considered the fourth best conference by Viper rating, and the ACC was the fifth best conference. So just in terms of how those strength ratings shook out, the SEC looked a little bit better. And I think that's something that we talked about before we started recording is that RPI, in which Tech, I think, was doing fairly well, near the top. RPI isn't necessarily the end all be all for these things. There's a lot more of a holistic measurement for the actual tournament selections outside of the auto bids. And that's kind of, I think, when you're trying to compare against conferences for one of these spots where the teams are so close, I think maybe that's where that tiebreaker gets pulled.
And I do want to say RPI is probably a lot closer to those rankings decisions than Evolve or Viper or any of these third-party volleyball rankings. Like, at the end of the day, the NCAA is going into their bag and they're looking at RPI, but all, strength of schedule, of course, as well. But they're going to use their metrics, and this is the same debate that people had for years in men's and women's basketball of like, oh, this Ken Palm guy, he's got this rating and it's a lot more accurate than RPI, so they cooked up net. Opinions aside on that, it does make sense that the NCAA kind of stays in-house. And it's a little bit different, of course, than how they formulate some of the other advanced stats that we do talk about pretty regularly on this.
There's some other notes around the ACC. Pittsburgh was a host and a national seed. They will host Coppin State in their regional. Louisville was a 2 seed, I think also in the Pittsburgh region. They will host Wright State at home. Tech, obviously, a 5 seed. FSU ended up being a 6 seed. They'll play TCU. I believe they're also in the Nebraska region with Tech. Miami was unseeded, but will play number 8 Northern Iowa. And if they beat Northern Iowa, they would get Wisconsin, who's the national. I think they're the national seed in that part of the bracket.
Yep.
Yes,
they are.
Yeah, they are. So,
going around
I think one other thing I do want to say, Pitt and Louisville being in the same side of the bracket means they're really trying to push that Elite 8 matchup there.
Yep, that's when they play. So
yeah, it's frustrating.
Draw some good ratings, I will say, but anyway.
It will draw. I mean, that Pittsburgh Louisville game is actually listed as the most exciting game of the year so far per the Viper ratings because it did go to 5, and
I think there's like 8,000 people at the one in Pittsburgh too. Like, it was a big deal.
So it will be box office. It's kind of an unfortunate reality of this bracket that it's in the Elite 8 rather than in the other 3 possible rounds. Beyond that. Because we got a Final Four version of that, right? A couple of years ago. We got
last year.
Yeah. And we got Final Four version of that last year, and I think the year before too. So
yeah, they keep
it's
finding
just a little frustrating.
They keep finding each other in the tournament. I was looking at the bracket, and there's a all Texas first and second rounds at Texas. They play Texas A&M, and the other side of that is SMU plays Texas State.
Yes, let's just force the Texas A&M match one more time this year before they actually have to in conference play.
Speaking of conference realignment, Stanford was a 1 national seed as well. SMU was a seeded team, so those are your ACC adjacents in play. I don't think Cal made much of a mark.
I think so, but I'm
in
not sure.
Volleyball, but I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, they're not in the tournament. But yeah, this sets up for a theoretical all ACC national championship. If Stanford and Pitt were to
future
go,
ACC
teams would play each other if that section of 1 seeds won. Or you get an all Big Ten if Nebraska and Wisconsin make it through though too. So like you could get an actual all conference championship or a present and future all conference national championship.
I will say the 21 national title, which was Nebraska, Wisconsin, was box office. Like, it was legitimately fun. Went to 5, legitimately fun the entire way through.
Good. Yeah. So much better than last year's final, which Texas just rolled over I forgot who they played.
It was Louisville.
That's right. They killed Louisville.
Ran through Louisville.
Yeah.
And that is I would say that's a different Louisville team than what they are now too. So
yeah, definitely. In terms of just like high level prognostication, I do not like Louisville's a 2 seed. I do not like them to get to the Final Four. I definitely like Pitt to do that. Oregon, I think, can make,
but it's going to be that Elite 8 game is going to go 5.
Hella good. It's going to be hella good.
This is still, I think, the most flawed Louisville team we've seen since they had to open up on the road at Texas in like 2018 or 2017, whenever that was.
Yeah, no, I could see Florida State being Arkansas. Arkansas is though doing as well as they've ever done in volleyball.
Arkansas's a
Kentucky,
good program. We caught them
Arkansas's
every year
good.
for like 4 straight years.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
Kentucky can be beat for sure. I mean, this is whoever. I mean, Nebraska's the team to beat for sure. Like, if we get
Literally
to
only lost once, and
lost
that
once
was
in
in a
most recent game, their
weird
most recent
sweep
game,
versus yeah.
yeah, against Wisconsin. So, if we have to play them, I mean, this is where our draw is the absolute worst. We're the 17th team, which means you get the number one team in the Sweet 16 if you get there. So, beating Florida, doable. Beating Nebraska, well, that's a different challenge.
Death.
That's a different challenge that we are not there. We are this program is making leaps and bounds. They've won 20 games in half their years under Michelle Collier. This year already I think was better than expected just with who was coming in and how well they've adjusted without Liv Mogridge. But they have not played a team like Nebraska yet. Even though they played Pitt twice, that is not the same as playing Nebraska.
I kind of do want to see it, but also I think it's
Oh, it'd
going to
be
be
amazing
awful.
to see. It'd be great to see. Yeah, I mean, we have beaten them on the road before. Like it's our two biggest wins in program history are at Nebraska and at Pitt. So like if there would be some history there if we got to play them again, especially in this context, and would easily be the best win in team history if they did that. But
Yeah,
I mean,
beating
Oh,
Nebraska
by
on
a
the road.
by a
wide margin.
wide margin.
By
Yeah,
a,
We're
what?
way far
beating
away from that,
Nebraska,
though. We got to beat Florida in their own building first, and that spooks
That's
me
gonna be
to
yeah.
it's
the dogs.
terrifying.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. We were I mean, we won 22 games this year, so we definitely were a good road team because we would win everywhere and anywhere and pushed Louisville. We pushed Louisville in their own building. Let's keep in mind that 3-1 loss was in Louisville's building, so we definitely rattled them way more than we did last year, and in years past. So while we still haven't won there, getting closer. As we all said earlier at the beginning of the pod, no moral victories, but the progress is there.
Yeah, just to give you an update on the calendar, the South Alabama Georgia Tech fixture is set for Thursday, November 30th at 4:30, with the Florida Gulf Coast and Florida game immediately to follow. And then the winners, I assume, will be at 7 p.m. on Friday, December 1st. So that is your TV schedule. Well, I guess I don't have channels, but that's at least the TV schedule to look out for on what I assume will be Watch ESPN and ESPN Plus. Last note, anyone have anything for volleyball before we move on?
Watch the games. Watch the games.
Let's finish up with some news and notes. The competitive drive initiative, the Turn 2, was announced this past week. I think maybe the week before, but I'm not sure we covered it. So I think the gambit with this second iteration of this is that you have to, if you donated last year, you have to increase your donation for it to actually be counted, which is honestly
For
a
like
very
what, more
clever
points
way
or
of,
whatever, or more
yeah,
matching and stuff like that.
yeah, it's a very clever way to get people to donate more. I have to give some credit to whoever thought of that. But yeah, so I think the goal again is 20 or $250,000 for this set. I think it was similar last year. I think they were about a quarter to halfway to their goal the last time that I looked at the chart. I don't have it in front of me, but these are very good and very successful fundraisers. It makes it very clear that people want to give Georgia Tech money and they just need more opportunities to and more themed opportunities to, rather than just the letters that the Alumni Association sends out every
Mm-hmm.
quarter asking for money. So I think this is a good format. I think the gambits to gamify it are good too. I don't know if either of you have any other thoughts on this.
I don't know.
I mean,
I think CDI is probably the main bump there that I think is a good like alignment sign as much as that word does get tossed around, but it's good to see it continue. And, that's something that seemed to help a lot last year, as we've discussed with, various debt payments and stuff like that. So props to them for that. Keep it up. That's really what I got.
That's what he got hired for. That's what his specialty was, fundraising.
Yep.
The only other question I had on this that I just thought of, actually, do we know if CDI is folded into Transforming Tomorrow, the capital campaign?
It seems like it's a cross payment from one to the other, but I'd have to do some digging on my end to get you a clearer answer there.
Yeah, interesting. Some other news. from swim and dive, Max Fowler, freshman on the dive team, was named ACC Men's Diver of the Week. He finished in first place in the 3-meter dive at Georgia's Fall Invite last week, but this news came out this past week after we recorded on Monday, so we didn't get that caught up. The school has put out its campus, the campus construction plan? That's a very unfortunate acronym, but
comprehensive campus plan.
Comprehensive campus plan, which is effectively its facilities master plan for the next, I think it's through 2030. I don't remember the exact timeline, but it's the master plan
it'll be
for the
longer.
next.
It'll be longer
for the next era of Georgia Tech. We'll have more to say on this in the future. I think Jake has a lot of thoughts and a lot of notes that he's still working on. So, but do you have anything that you want to tease us with? Give us a little bit of a peek under the curtain.
I mean, between infra, sports, some of the concepts that they really pushed in terms of a couple of the plan presentations that they published earlier, I think all that feedback is going to stay consistent. It's just a matter of us getting together, really dedicating some time for it. To peek behind the curtain a little bit, we're an hour and a half into this recording right now. It wouldn't do it justice to staple it on the end. So working on outlining some thoughts there, also getting some, feedback and stuff from the Institute there. But yes, there'll be some sports interest. There'll be some infra interest, as well as just the physical plant. And I know that these concepts can seem kind of vague, but as they start coming together, it's pretty neat to see. I read the landscape master plan in like 2016 or 2017, and then to see them open up the Atlantic Street like pedestrian walkway from Howie down to Tech Green. It's like, oh, like they actually did that. Like that's like
also the eco
that's
commons?
The design that they wanted and stuff.
I remember you telling me about the eco commons right when the original plan got released, that they were going to do a park where the police lot was. They were going to move the police department. All this stuff, it's only within the last 10 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is something that they started laying out in 2004. So if the timeline of the previous MPUs are to be believed, those are, something that lasts 20, maybe more years. So this is not necessarily, hey, we're finally getting that Eco Commons Lake or whatever, or parking, or park replacing Peter's parking deck. But those things like that are that's why you keep them in the plan, because that's how you get that kind of stuff to happen. But at the same time, making sure that Tech Square and even newer things that have come along like Science and Art Square get incorporated as those opportunities arise. And like I said, don't want to tease too much of it out, but there are definitely a lot of points of interest that we'll hit on once we can record a Science Extra on it.
Another 90-minute podcast episode planned in the future. Mr. Purdy, our final note for tonight, Construction Corner. What do you have for me?
If you were on campus this past weekend or have been in the last month and have been on 4th Street specifically, the Catholic Centers, Frats, Beta, and all those kind of places, all the way up to the Kolk building or the Clough Commons, you'll notice there's been a lot of construction. They've been redoing the sidewalks the entire way down the street, down 4th Street from Techwood to the Kolk, where they haven't already redone it. The sidewalks are not in great shape, and they're adding some more ADA accessibility spots as well, so you can fit more wheelchair kind of things. So that's just a good sign. Some trees are going away, but this does widen the sidewalks too, which is good. That's been needed. I believe it might eliminate. I don't know if it's eliminating the street parking on 4th entirely or not.
Please.
I would think it is.
Death to street parking.
It definitely allows for better traffic with people that are on scooters or on bikes and stuff like that. So, or whatever personal mobility things that they're using, which is going to be more helpful, especially because there is a whole multimodal non-driving thing that is in the campus plan. So
it'll also involve an actual cycle track and streetscape for the improvements they're doing on 4th. So
didn't you say you only wanted to tease this?
No, this is an active project. The shovels are in the ground. This is not. We drew some, plans.
They're doing this.
Pulled them together. This is like there's a guy out there, dicking it up and putting in the bike path kind of thing.
Yeah, it's happening. Also, if you have driven on Northside Drive recently, you'll if you at the corner of 10th and Northside, you'll notice there's a lot of dirt and flattening going on. That is where so I believe that's where one of the new dorms is supposed to be going up. And so they are beginning the process of getting the land ready, getting the foundation done, all that kind of stuff. So if you're driving there and you're wondering where did all the trees go, that's why the trees are gone, because that's where we're going to be housing some new students as campus grows. Also, I'll note, if y'all want to read the campus comprehensive plan, it is available. You can read it. They also have a video, so if you want to watch it or read it and then come into the podcast whenever we release it that way, so you can be all caught up, that is an option.
Are you giving our listeners homework?
No. So
I'm giving them an option.
No, I think this is a great thing to call out, because this is probably one of the most inside baseball-y things that we talk about, is this like design language stuff. So I would definitely recommend doing that. It's kind of up the same alley as learning what Viper is, because we talk about stuff like that all the time too. So definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, we'll be back with some more on that soon. There, gents, I think that takes us to our outro. Do we have any other content before we log off?
I had one thing. Do we know if there's a name for that 10th and Northside building yet?
I have not seen one.
I believe it's between 8th and 9th in Northside, because the Southern Regional Educational Board, I believe, still has the property on the corner, but I haven't seen a donor or foundation name for Woody's 2.
Woody's 2 Electric Boogaloo. Print it and paste it. I think that's a perfect way to end our night here, Mr. Grant.
George and Irene's newer, bigger Woodruff. Anyways, as always, thanks for tuning in. You can tell your friends where to find us. That's from therumbleseat.com for not just this content, but also all the written word we put up there. Variety of sports, variety of topics, and that'll just keep continuing as various football and other points of interest continue on towards the holiday season. For feedback, you can email us at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FTRS Blog. You can find me at JakeGrant98, Jack at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 and Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at From the Rumble Seat, and this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. As always, good night, good luck. See you next week, and go Jackets.